Hello, everybody. Welcome to our ghostly, creepy, crawly, I don't know, slimy, could be slimy, uh,
Run.
Halloween special. And with me here is Alex, the historian. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead and introduce your guest.
So next to me on the screen is my friend Chris from Chris with a K. He's been my friend for several years, and he actually films all of the footage that you see on my updates on my channel from the Queen Mary. So all that footage you see walking around the ship, he filmed that for me. So say hello to everyone, Chris.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex's friend. He has me here. Unfortunately, I can't leave, but yeah,
He's
glad to
shackled.
be here. I'm shackled. I'm shackled to my seat.
And then to our right, his I guess would be his left, is my friend Milad. Say hello, Milad.
Hello, greetings to all. Ahoy.
He should have been our roaming reporter on the ship, but due to a change of scheduling with him, he's at home. So he's going to join us in the conversation. And then to my immediate left, which would be your right of me, is Shilo, aka Henry Hall fan, aka the HBC channel. Say hello, Shilo.
Hello, everybody.
And if everybody remembers, he was the one who was dressed up in the Cunard White Star Seaman's uniform when I was in the observation bar for the United States meeting. But we're
right.
Yeah, that was impressive. And you tricked me, remember?
I did. I did.
So
With the assistance of Alex.
Yeah, exactly, with a little assistance from Alex. But we are going to yeah. You remember that, Alex?
I almost forgot about it.
Well, we want to talk about the supernatural, the paranormal, the things that go bump in the night on our wonderful ship, which could just be expansion, could just be, a mechanical failure of something. But there are some people who want to believe that it is actually somebody or something from the world beyond,
The other side.
the other side. And but before we can even discuss that, I think we should probably talk about the real life deaths, don't you think?
Yep, definitely.
And although he did not die on board, and Alex, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this because you recently read the book of Queen Mary, Queen of Queens, is on Sir Edgar Britton. I'm going to show a picture here really quick.
Would you like me to
That's not him.
read from the passage?
Yes, yeah, go ahead and read that passage really quick.
Okay, so the author got the day of the death wrong, so I'm going to alter that when I read it out loud. But he was off by 1 day, just so you guys know.
There we go.
The Queen Mary wasn't making any speed run on October 20th. She ran into a 60-mile-an-hour gale en route to Southampton. 13 passengers were injured as the ship was whipped by the winds for 3 days straight. Commodore Britain remained on the bridge during the storm, which at times was so violent that it seemed it would break up the giant liner. While readying the ship for her return voyage, October 28th, he collapsed and died of a heart seizure. His staff captain, R.V. Peel, took command and sailed the ship on time.
And if everybody caught that attention, today is October the 28th. The exact anniversary of his death.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We should have a moment of silence for him.
I agree.
You broke the silence.
thought you guys said he didn't die on the ship.
So yeah, so that's what we're gonna talk about now. So
I'm just like we're giving this guy silence, but he didn't even die on the ship. I'm just like,
So we give him credit for maybe dying on the ship, but yeah, he didn't
Possible.
actually. We don't think he died on the ship. He was reported to have collapsed on the bridge while the ship was turning, to head westbound instead of and she had already arrived in Southampton, and I'm not even sure what the date of that is, because the book does not coincide with the dates. But
Yeah.
but he was found unconscious. Now I use that word loosely, unconscious, because as far as I understand, he was Irish Catholic, so being needed to be given his last rites, his official death wouldn't have been documented until after his last rites were given, and that would have taken place in the hospital, which is what his official death is. It's in the hospital once he was taken off the ship. So I have a feeling that he possibly passed on board. His body was taken to the hospital, and he was pronounced dead in the hospital. That makes a lot of sense for being a Catholic.
That is true.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But his words live on. He wrote a book. He wrote a book called A Million Ocean Miles, and you can occasionally find a copy of it on eBay. Let me show that book really quick here.
I had no idea he wrote a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
Don't worry, Alex. I didn't know either.
I would. Now it says number 4 at the top, so I'm assuming this is some kind of a series of books that were. I don't know if it's a series of books from him, or what. But I mean, he obviously wrote this version or this edition. So I'm gonna have to find it on eBay. But yeah, you can find it on eBay. It would be interesting reading for sure, because he was master of the Aquitania, the Berengaria, the Mauritania, the Laconia, and I think he started in like 1901 with Cunard.
No, it said something like 1890s last time I read.
Well, yeah, I mean, even so, I mean, good grief, that's a lot of years with Cunard. He had, I mean, A Million Ocean Isles. That's many years with Cunard. So I can see where he would have a lot of stories to tell. It would be very good reading. Was there anything else in that book that mentioned anything about Commodore Britain?
About his death?
Yeah, specifically, I guess.
Because they have a lot of stuff about Britain, but that's about it for his death.
Okay. Let's see. I think I had. No, I didn't have. Never mind.
He was the captain. You know, he was the first captain of the Queen Mary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the Queen Mary went on her maiden voyage, and
correct.
He had kind of a little bit of a tough time, because you see, when the Queen Mary had her maiden voyage, the press and everybody was expecting the Queen Mary to compete for the riband, but Cunard and Commodore Britain both had said, no, we're not going to compete for the riband on this first run, because I think in the back of their minds they knew that the vibration issues were going to prevent the ship from going at full speed. But for several voyages, he did not compete for the riband, and a lot of the press suddenly turned against him and said that he was too cautious, that he wouldn't let the ship run full out, and he was under so much pressure. He finally decided one day to make the run, and I believe the ship did capture the riband. I believe it was for the westbound crossing.
Right.
which it soon lost to the
Right.
Normandy.
I love the newsreel interview with him, where he was asked about, what was your impression of the performance of the Queen Mary on her maiden voyage, and he said, our speed came up above expectations, and they were pleased with what the ship did. And they asked him specifically, "Are you going to try for the blue ribbon?" And he said, "Oh, naturally, that's what we're out for. What did we build her for?"
Right. I remember that.
Yep. So,
Mhm.
in total, there were 16 crew members, and that's including officers, that are recorded to have died on the Queen Mary. Technically, Sir Edgar Britton did not die on the Queen Mary, but I remember I use that term loosely because we suspect that he probably did pass either on the bridge or maybe even in his cabin, just prior to sailing. But on the books, on the official books, he didn't pass. And that's going to lead into our next crew member that we're going to talk about, who also didn't pass on the Queen Mary, but his death is so talked about. And the circumstances involving the situation of his death is so significant that you have to consider him a death of the Queen Mary, and that would be Commander William Stark. Are you familiar with him at all, Alex, or anybody?
Yes, in fact, he's featured in the video I posted earlier this morning.
Is he really?
Yeah.
He is.
I should have watched your video this morning before before we did this morning. Wow. Okay. Well, what did you talk about in your video?
I mean, do you want me to tell the whole story, or?
Well, you can.
It's basically the same thing that Shilo told me.
Oh, Shilo, what did you tell him?
Well, he was the staff captain. No, the captain asked him to go get a drink, so he went to the staff captain's cabin. He's searching for the bottle, and he found that it was hard to find. And he found an old gin bottle, so he brought it back to the captain's cabin. Prepared some drinks. They drank it, and later he reported that he felt kind of funny. So the captain suspected that he probably drank what was stored in that gin bottle, which was carbon. How do you say it again? What was the
Carbon
tetrachloride.
tetrachloride? All right. And that's what was stored in that bottle. So the captain immediately ordered the other officers that drank that to go get their stomachs pumped, and he didn't think it was very much a serious situation as it was. So he kind of brushed it off. And 3 days later, after he drank it on the 18th, he succumbed to his injuries because of the cleaning solution that he had ingested in his stomach.
Yeah, that's the thing that really gets me is the fact that, he had, the way I had understood it was that he had asked the captain's steward to serve the officers drinks in the officers' wardroom or in his cabin in the
his day room.
Yeah, his day room in the officers' quarters, and the captain's steward was not familiar with the officers' steward's pantry, so he was looking around in there looking for the bottle of gin because he ordered gin and lime. That's what they wanted, gin and lime. And was looking for the bottle of gin, couldn't find the bottle of gin until he found a bottle of gin, or at least a marked gin.
Yeah.
But it was a dirty old bottle, and what he didn't know was that the captain's steward or the officer's steward had kept cleaning fluid, the carbon tetrachloride, in this old gin bottle.
Yeah.
And so he served it to everybody, but he was the first one to drink it, and noticed it was kind of funny. I would think that if you drank carbon tetrachloride, that it would be a little more than funny.
You would taste that.
It's very different from gin.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the lime hit it. I have no idea, but yeah. So he even what I was just reading just a few hours ago, just to kind of brush myself up on the whole story, was that he had even attended dinner, I guess, with the captain. Later, and he said, "Boy, that gin was awfully funny," and he kind of laughed this whole thing off. But as days progressed into that voyage heading towards Southampton, he was completely, like, his health went downhill slowly, and then was taken off the ship. And then what was it on the 20? No, on the 23rd, correct?
23rd. Because he drank it on the 18th and died on the 23rd.
Drank it on the 18th of September 1949, and then succumbed to it on September 23rd. And but he was always coherent. Like he could speak. You would think that the way I understand it was that it would have affected his liver and kidneys, and so he probably died from poisoning of the liver and kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
But
the funny thing is that the story that I told, the one that I got from Shilo, had mentioned that when he told the captain that the gin tasted funny, the captain immediately recognized that he must have accidentally grabbed the bottle of cleaning fluid, and he ordered everybody to go to the ship's doctor to have their stomach pumped, but it was because everybody drank it, so he had everybody get their stomach pumped, but it was Officer Stark that refused to go.
Yeah.
See, I wasn't aware of any of the other officers drinking it. I only knew of Stark drinking it, but that's a possibility, I guess. That
and it would make sense if they did get it pumped, and they'd be fine because they got medical attention.
Right.
Yeah.
But Stark laughed it off. Like he didn't. Yeah, he refused to get his stomach pumped, and which I think was his fatal error.
Yeah.
He should have had that done on board. Oh, which, by the way, in your video, do you talk about the hospital?
I do. I talked in great length about the hospital and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So that would be where he would have had his stomach pumped if he had asked to do so. So you're going to have to watch Alex's new video to see where he would have gotten his stomach pumped.
And that's where the other officers did get their stomach pumped, yeah.
And that's where the other officers would have gotten their stomach pumped. Right, correct. Yeah. Let's see. Evan Scott is asking, how come the bottle didn't say cleaning poison on it? So, it was a bad habit for the stewards and other crew members to keep cleaning fluids and things of the like in bottles, whatever bottles they could find, including old gin bottles. And in fact, I've seen a copy of the Cunard notice that was posted to all crew members stating, do not continue to keep, cleaning fluids and other dangerous material in unmarked or mismarked bottles like that. That was the fatal error, was that the officer steward kept carbon tetrachloride in a gin bottle. If he hadn't have done that, it wouldn't have ever happened. Go ahead.
I was going to say that notice probably came directly after Stark had passed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was post death. Yeah. This was probably that notice probably came out maybe mid-October.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Moonzer is asking, do you happen to know where the bottle was located, where he found it? So I have no idea. When you go into the officers' quarters today, you kind of circle around. The captain's pantry is gone. That was obliterated. But you see a portion of the officers' steward's pantry today. And where
is that what that is?
Yeah, that's the officer's steward's pantry that's there today. And I couldn't tell you where in that pantry that bottle was stored. But I don't know. It was somewhere in that pantry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Such a small error resulted in such a big catastrophic life, you know?
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's usually
And people still make those same mistakes today. I mean, there's people
Yeah.
who, if they have extra cleaning solution and they just need to carry a small amount of it, they'll put it in a water bottle or something.
that's a bad idea.
You know, a water spray bottle. And I mean, even when I worked at Disney, there were people who made terrible mistakes where they'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna store this cleaning fluid in this bottle," and I'd have to tell them like, "You can't do that. That bottle is for water. If someone sprays that water on something thinking that it's for water, you've just sprayed cleaning solution on food, like."
Yeah.
So people still make that mistake even to this day. And it's like if you ever see someone doing that, put a stop to it, because that could kill somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And good.
Chris, were you familiar with at all with the
I wasn't familiar with the fact that that more people drank it. The stories I heard was just like he drank it and he didn't know and he died. But I didn't know that like if the captain didn't give that order, like more people would have died. At least like probably 20 people would have died. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the story I had always heard was that it was just him. It was always kept to
Mhm.
him, and not the other officers. Like he was the first one to, I guess, basically shoot it, and
Mhm.
and he laughed it off. But of course, that would have given warning to the other officers not to drink the drink that they had been served. But yeah, I guess it's possible that the other officers had consumed it. But yeah.
Oh, did you
Go ahead.
put the newspaper clipping up?
So I didn't. I'm not sure if that's his picture, Shilo. I don't think
No.
that's him in that.
No, but it talks about him in the thing.
Yeah, I didn't put it up.
Oh.
I didn't put it up. And I had the his dad's Siemens cards, but I didn't put that up either.
Yeah.
I figured that was his dad.
We
William
should
Stark.
talk about John Ped.
That's
Hmm?
next. That's next. Don't jump the gun there,
okay.
Shiloh. I mean, Milad.
Okay.
No, Stark was a huge seaman. I mean, seafaring was in his blood, starting with his father. I mean, he was William Eric Stark Jr., the son of William Eric Stark Sr., who was chief officer of like half of the fleet of Cunard in the early part
Wow.
of the 20th century. And
Mhm.
he had a decorated war career on the Queen Mary. He had several decorations. He met his wife on the Queen Mary. She was a nurse. They got married in, I think, 1943 in Port Said, Egypt. And so his life was dedicated to this ship. And
Mhm.
Wow.
I guess you could say that, if you were to have a spirit come back to be around the Queen Mary, that I could see Stark's spirit wanting to come back to the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
What were we gonna say, Milad?
No, I was just gonna say we were gonna talk about John Ped.
Let me take a guess. You want to talk about John Ped?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's
You're
talk
obsessed.
That's it's not so much an obsession, it's more of it's such a notorious engineering. It's probably the only engineering related mishap
All
that
right.
happened on this ship. Like, with the
Oh,
death.
okay. I didn't know who this John Ped was. And I heard engineering. I'm like, oh, okay, it's that guy.
It's that guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that guy. It's
Yeah.
that guy. Okay.
All right. I was gonna go ahead and talk about something else first, but we'll skip to John Ped and then we'll jump back a little bit. Let me go back to my pictures here, and so there he is, Mr. John Ped, 18 years old. Was actually assigned to. I was actually reading this. He was assigned to bilge pump duty on the evening of July 10th, 1966. Bilge pump. Now I had him listed as an oilman, which would be basically assigned to like checking bearings, making sure bearings are oiled and at the right temperature, properly cooled. But
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah,
bilge pumps do use oil.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But bilge pump duty. That's the one that got me was bilge pump duty, and quite a few of us, I think, realized that Mr. Petter was he succumbed to his injuries by being crushed to death by the infamous watertight door number 13. This is watertight door number 13. It is in the starboard side shaft alley. I'd say maybe 2/3 of the way through. There would be more shaft alleyway, but it's not there today. Um, this is where a lot of ghosts.
Shaft Alley was actually longer
Oh,
than it.
oh yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
probably
I didn't
about
know that.
yeah, about
I didn't know
another
that either.
30 feet beyond.
So how long is it now?
Golly, maybe about 50 feet total.
Okay, so it would be another length of what's there
About another
today.
about
Wow.
another 25 to 30 feet. Yeah, you had to step through another watertight door. If you
To
were
get to the.
yeah, like today, although the escalators do
The
not work
watertight
today,
door.
you would go that pretending the escalator isn't there. There's another watertight door that you would pass through, and
Mhm.
and then about another 15, 20 feet beyond that of
Do you know what's behind there now?
yeah, nothing.
Oh, nothing.
Well,
There's no shaft.
There's a air conditioning unit that's in that compartment, and the catwalks are gone, and you have to walk. Well, you have to actually crawl
There's
on 2x6s across the frame members in order to get way to the aft portion of the hull. I crawled back there years and years ago.
Wow.
And there was an issue with flooding. They had flooded it in the 80s and 90s, and then they drained it, but they never cleaned it. They never cleaned the steel, so it's a
Why they flood it?
for weight. Well, also I think that there was a leak from that air conditioning unit, so there was condensation that was coming from that air conditioning unit.
I see.
Yeah.
Where was that tunnel from the Jacques Cousteau museum? Was that down there too?
What was the ride
No.
thing from that? Was it?
Wait a minute. The tunnel in Jacques Cousteau.
Yeah.
That's what passes through the engine room.
Oh, okay. That's higher up then. Okay.
Yeah. That's the walkway that goes from the engine room exhibit to the exhibit hall. It passes by the just to the port side of the port side condenser. You can see
And
it's that big white shaft, box that kind of goes.
That's like it's like a half circle, right? Or like a circle?
No, it's square.
No, you showed me a photo of one that was circular.
Oh boy, you're gonna have to tell me what this is.
I have to bring that one back up later, but
Yeah, absolutely. Moonzer, you're talking about a black door, watertight door 15.
yeah.
I'm not even sure where watertight.
I think
door
he's talking
15
about
is.
that one. That's the outer. There's like a watertight door at the back portion of the port side shaft alley.
Yeah, if you keep going down, there is another watertight door. It's shut though.
Yeah.
Well, there's several that are shut. That are, I guess you could
But
say permanent.
the one that's immediately, the one that's immediately to the end of the shaft alley. I think he's referring to.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one. Yes, that's right, and it is painted black. That's it. That's the door. Yep. All right. Did we talk about John Peder now? Good enough for you, Milad?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny though that I would say that of all the crew member related deaths, his is the most talked about because of, I think.
Yeah.
First off, his death was really weird.
It was very weird.
His
Mhm.
in
I
fact,
mean,
there are some people who say that he died not from not from an accident, but that he was purposely placed in that door.
Really?
Mhm.
yeah, I've heard that too.
That he had a lot of gambling debts with crew members who he was not paying up with, and yeah, kind of purposely meant.
Wow.
Well, for one,
That's dark.
according
Hmm.
to the death certificate on the ship, his feet are perfectly placed on the forward end of the bulkhead, and his torso is leaning aft through the door and into the aft portion of the bulkhead into the next compartment. Okay, how does a person get trapped in a watertight door with both feet planted on one side with his torso in the middle?
Yeah.
That is strange.
How does
Ooh,
that
that's
happen?
weird.
Yeah,
Well-
that is really really strange. His
But
Go ahead.
under the theory that we had that he was trying to reach the lever to manually open it, what if he was leaning over to reach it?
Well, no, Steve's saying that he's leaning backwards.
Well, opposite from the lever?
Oh no! He would be leaning forward. He's facing.
Yeah.
Oh.
His body is facing aft. His head
Yeah.
and torso are in the aft portion. In the next compartment.
He's,
But
he's in the door diagonally, right?
But usually, when you are going to step into a compartment, because you got to remember, you had to step over the threshold of the door.
Yeah.
It's not like today where you can just walk straight through. But normally you step in, like you take 1 foot in. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
I agree. Yeah. So like I was thinking about it when you were talking about it. It doesn't make sense because usually if you're because the bulkheads they have like a lip on the bottom, right?
Right.
It's like that.
Right.
So you have to step
Yes.
over. You lean forward first. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
You wouldn't
Well-
normally. Your leg should be the first part of your body to go through the door.
That goes in. Yeah.
Well, what if he was stepping through it, and then right as the door touched his chest, he realized he wasn't going to make it through, so he tried to pull himself back the other way.
You would pull your body back first. That's what people do.
I would-
They would
Yeah,
lean
but the
back.
thing is
Yeah.
touching his
I
chest.
would
It's
think
like
let
squeezing him. So
it
he's like
crush
trying to...
your leg, not you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, because
yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say instinctively, I this is how people are wired. They always move the head away from the most dangerous thing. So if your body gets put in like a dangerous situation, the first thing your body does is move your head away.
Yeah.
The legs come last, always come last. So the legs would have been last to move. So if something touches your torso, you immediately do that. You don't move your leg first. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was being squeezed, so he couldn't move his torso.
Well, remember that bulkhead door is moving really slowly. It doesn't move that fast. He definitely has time to move.
Yeah,
No,
they-
what I mean is like
Well,
what
what
I mean is that it didn't happen
Hear the
immediately.
chicken
What I mean
theory?
is like he's like trying to get through. He's realizing that he's not going to be able to squeeze because it's already crushing him. So he instead moves his leg back to where he was, and then he's trying to pull himself back because he's only got part of him in the door. So maybe he thought at the last minute, that maybe he
Maybe.
could try to pull himself back.
But save himself.
I don't. Well, going back a little earlier about Steve's thing, talking about like if he was intentionally put there, wasn't he alive until they opened the bulkhead door? That's what they
Yeah,
said.
he had a low pulse. He had a low pulse.
Yeah,
So he was unconscious. I
Yeah.
thought- so
and that's what even adds to the craziness of his ultimate death was that he was spotted by another crew member. Actually, the
In the
initial
door.
report was a call from the bridge down to the engine room,
Oh,
and the bridge,
Mhm.
because the bridge was reporting that the watertight door was reported not closed for 13. So they had to send somebody back there, and that was when he was spotted, pinned in the doorway. So they called the ship's doctor and some nurses and some other people came down, and they all kind of came down there, and according to the log that I read, was that they kind of all stand there, and like, yeah, I think he's dead. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
That is so weird.
And
That
it
is
took
so
almost
weird.
like 30 minutes for them to finally decide, okay, let's open the watertight doors, because they were under fog, so the doors were closed automatically. It wasn't a drill. The ship had entered fog. So so they decided to open the watertight doors. Nobody was there to even catch him. So they opened the door and they
Wow.
let his body fall to the catwalk. And that was when finally the ship's doctor said, "Okay, well let's take an official pulse to record his time of death." And that was when the nurse felt his pulse and like, well, I kind of feel a faint pulse. She couldn't guarantee that it was an actual pulse. She just thought that there was a pulse. And so they decided, okay, let's order Stokes. So they ordered the Stokes down. They didn't even have Stokes there, so it took another 10 minutes for them to bring Stokes down. And they loaded him onto the Stokes. They brought him up into the ship's hospital, and that was when they took an official pulse. He had no pulse, and they declared him dead.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, through that whole course of time, that's almost an hour.
Yeah, but there's a big chance he was looking to survive anyway.
Yeah, I would agree.
No.
Yeah.
I would agree. He probably had lung puncture from his ribs.
Yeah.
That would be my assumption. Was that his lungs his rib cage punctured his lungs.
Mm.
Yeah.
They probably thought that, when they saw him in the door, they probably thought that he was going to die in that door. So they probably just didn't want to do anything.
Oh, I think they thought he was dead.
Oh.
I mean, that's what my opinion was that, they just assumed he was dead, which was that they didn't even take the pulse, immediately.
Yeah, until after they opened the door.
Yeah, till after they opened the door. But
Jeez, that'd be a
for
horrible way to die.
for a fish, I know.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
It is. I wouldn't want.
And the worst thing is like even if there were people down there, no one would have heard him, like because the engine room was too loud. So he just would have
Well,
been screaming.
the shaft alley was also a very quiet area, and not that many
Yeah, but
people were
shaft-
in that portion.
Yeah, quiet as far as people.
Yeah.
I mean, there were only 5 crew members, assigned to an
Per engine room.
Yeah.
But the other engineers would have been all the way up forward, and it was noisy in there.
Right,
so.
right. 3 of the 5 would have been on the maneuvering platform. So you only have 2 that are wandering through Shaft Alley and through all the the different catwalks that go around the machinery space. So
Yeah.
Right.
so I mean, who knows even how long he was pinned there? I don't know what the time
Yeah.
is, but yeah.
Well, there's
Ultimately-
no report from when the bridge. There's no report from when the bridge noticed that the indicator light wasn't on.
It's been at least 30 years since I read that report, so I couldn't tell you
Oh.
if it was. I'm sure there was. There had to have been. But nonetheless, it was still. I remember for sure it was still at like a half an hour from the time he was spotted until the time
Yeah.
he was loaded in Stokes.
No, but having a malfunctioning bulkhead door is a really big issue, especially back then.
Yeah.
So he was probably dead for maximum 5-10 minutes. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Somebody's
Probably
also
wasn't.
said that he was playing chicken over the door.
I don't believe that.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't think
No.
so.
That
No.
I don't believe
that
that.
has been
No.
brought up, and a lot of tour guides. Here we go into the.
Yeah.
This is okay. This is BS mode. So tour guides talk about how John Ped was playing chicken. I don't believe it.
Hmm.
Absolutely don't believe it. That's
No.
not typical behavior of a crew member.
No, especially in a situation, an area like that where the environment is really serious, you wouldn't be playing those kinds of games
Yeah.
with machinery like that.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, unless we're seeing like steam locomotive engineers play chicken with how low they can get the water, I'm pretty sure that never would have happened.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, and low water on a crown sheet. Bad idea.
No.
Bad idea. So we'll move ahead. Well, actually, let's go ahead and go back because I wanted to make Milad happy and talk about John Peder. I think are you channeling John Peder right now?
No, I just thought bringing him up would be interesting because a lot of people don't know his story.
That's true.
And it's like, oh, the engineer, and he's the most notorious engine room spirit and probably the only engineer related
And you know what?
fatality
I
on
want to go
board.
back and show his picture really quick. Let me go. Okay, so let's
Yes.
go back to that's the watertight door. Let's go back to his picture.
Because
So-
some of the stories, spirit-wise, can be exaggerated a little bit, and he wasn't one of those.
So
He was a real story.
He was, and I'm sure that he has ancestors. You know, he has living family members that This was only 1966. I mean, this only that's 6 years before I was born. So this photograph is probably taken when he was either 16, 17. When he died on maybe early 18, but when he died on board, he was well into being 18, and he actually had a full on beard. But I mean, he looks like a kid here.
Yeah.
Definitely somebody who died before his time.
Oh yeah.
And if anybody ever watches this video who's a relative of the Peder family, we our condolences to the loss. All right, let's go ahead and let's talk about the historical deaths that are actually not recorded. Let's talk first about.
B341. Ooh.
Oh.
No, that's coming up. That's coming up. But no, I want to talk first about the Curaçao incident.
Oh yes, that was a terrible incident.
So I'll go back to. Let me actually go into. Let's see. That's going to be actually before this here. So there we go. So this is the HMS Curacoa, who was assigned escort duty for the Queen Mary leaving Gourock, Scotland, and was on a westbound crossing. Correct, Alex?
It was eastbound to Scotland.
Was eastbound to Scotland. Okay, so she joined her on her approach into Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a matter of mass confusion between what the Queen Mary's course was, what the Curaçao's course was. There was obviously a huge discrepancy in speed because the Queen Mary could do a lot faster than what the Curaçao could. There was basically an order given for the Queen Mary to continue on her course unescorted. The Curaçao continued her zigzag course across the Queen Mary's bow. The Queen Mary could see that the Curaçao was on a collision course. The Curaçao could see that the Queen Mary was on a collision course. Both ships decided that they were going to wait for the other ship to make a correction. They waited so long that it became basically too late for either one of them to make a correction, and the Queen Mary basically sliced the Curaçao in half, killing 301 on board, if I remember correctly. And this is another one of those, where you hear a lot of reports of people hearing the sound of collision, about the sound of metal clanging back and forth, and
or screams.
Yes, screams. And Alex, go ahead and talk to us a little bit about what you know about this.
So, from what I had heard was that when the Queen Mary had plowed into Curaçao, well, you see, the first officer of the Curaçao wanted to adjust the course, but the captain, which was Captain Boutwood of the Curaçao, had said, no, we've got the right of way because we're the escort ship. And then on the Queen Mary, the captain had left the bridge a while earlier after explaining to his first officer that they would be rendezvousing with Curacoa, and that Queen Mary took precedence because she was the larger ship. So that's where that confusion had begun. And when the two ships were coming dangerously close, the first officer of the Curacoa had ordered the ship to, make an evasive maneuver, but it was already too late at that point.
Right.
And that's when, Queen Mary struck it in the center and then sliced the ship in half. And when that had happened, almost nobody on board the Queen Mary felt anything. It was, if anything, those who were towards the bow felt a slight shudder, but nobody really realized anything until the explosions on board Curaçao, as the boilers exploded in the water, and then of course the sounds of the men screaming and hollering, and that's when those who were already on deck had noticed that the Queen Mary had struck the other ship.
Right.
They recognized immediately that it was Curaçao, and they went and grabbed anything that they had that was buoyant, chairs, even their own life vests. They threw overboard the Queen Mary and into the water in hopes that those who would survive the crash would be able to float on those things. And it was witnessed that some of them who were floating around the water were pulled towards the Queen Mary with the current, because the ship going so fast, it has a current that pulls water towards it.
Right.
And some of those men were sucked into her propellers. And it was just a really devastating carnage of a situation. And and then there was a man, I don't remember his name, but he happened to have his camera with him, and he took photos of the last moments of Curaçao.
And of course, I had that picture, but it's not in
I'm
my
gonna try to
folder
get it
anymore.
for you because I have the photo.
Show it in your little you can show you or share your screen or whatever.
I don't know that I can share my screen, but hold on.
It almost reminds me of Britannic. When Britannic was lowering her lifeboats while the captain was still trying to keep the ship, he wanted to beach the ship off the coast of Greece.
Yeah.
And of course they were lowering the lifeboats, releasing the falls, and of course, like you said, the current drags you towards the stern. And of course, and
suction. It's a suction.
Right. And Britannic is lifting up out of the water, so her blades are actually exposed at that time, and was a far deeper, chaotic set of circumstances for Britannic, but same situation where you're drawn into that suction of the cavitation of the propellers on the Queen Mary, and she couldn't stop. Her orders were, under no circumstances do you stop, unless given orders to, because if she were to stop, she was vulnerable to a U-boat attack.
It also would take her I think it was 3 or 4 miles to stop, was it not? Would be kind of pointless to stop at that point.
Yeah. I mean, she would have to make a circle around, which would it would basically still leave her completely vulnerable. Either she's going to come to a dead stop, but she's several miles away, or she could make a circle back. She could make a circle back around, but again, she's going to come to a stop, which would leave her, incredibly vulnerable to a torpedo attack.
Going back to your suction thing, I know you're trying to explain the suction effect to people so they can understand, but there's actually a great video online of a guy who almost died. Actually, he took his jet ski up to a giant, cargo ship,
Really?
They have one propeller. Yeah, they go really slow. But even those things, they have a lot of suction. He went up to touch it, and his jet ski literally got sucked underneath the boat. And he almost got sucked into the propeller. I don't know if it was a viral video, but that ship was going a lot slower than those other ships. The other ships they're deeper, so there's even more suction. The cargo ships don't have.
If you leave me the link for that video, I'll put it in the description after this.
I can find it right now.
Yeah.
You don't even believe this. I made 4 copies of that photo knowing that I'd one day like not know where I put it. So I put the 4 copies in 4 various places that I knew that would be related to the situation. I cannot find a single one of those photos in any of my files.
So so Kipper, Boxstar Line is on, and he was asking the question, very terrible accident, but who was at fault? Opinion-wise.
Oh, for the Curacoa.
So that's something I can actually talk about. They did a investigation, and it was taken to court and everything, and it was trying to decide who was at fault. Now, according to officially, the majority, I would say like 3/4 of the blame was officially put on Curacoa because they should have moved out of the way. The Queen Mary was a much larger ship, and and Curacoa had more maneuverability. But 1/4 of the blame was also put on Queen Mary for also not taking any kind of evasive action. So, but yeah, that's how it technically worked out. And the thing was that their people in the court did not really agree with that idea. They thought like, oh no, Queen Mary should have moved, and they were also upset that Queen Mary did not stop to assist the survivors. That was the majority of the outcry. But they asked Captain Boutwood, but Captain Boutwood of the Curacoa survived the incident.
Right.
And they asked him, they said, did the Queen Mary do the right thing by not stopping and leaving you guys behind? And reluctantly, very, very reluctantly, he said, yes, I believe she did.
And I think the salt on the wound of that entire event was the fact that was kept secret. So all the family members of the lives lost on the Curacoa were told, well, they were just basically a casualty of war. They weren't given any explanation as to what their cause of death was, and that went on for years. I think maybe in the 80s, 70s, or 80s was it finally released to the public.
Oh, you found it.
I found the photo. I don't have my computer prepared for sharing my screen right now. So if someone has a way of putting that up.
I think Steve has a way to put it on now.
If you put it in the channel, let's see. Okay. I mean, yeah, that's what I mean. The chat. If you put it in the chat, I will put on. Oops. Wait a minute. Poop. I will put on. There's the picture of the Curacoa. Okay, go ahead and give me that picture, and I will add that in. Oh yeah, there we go. No, that's not where we want to put it. We want to put it in here, and there, and there, and we'll go to. We'll go back to this, and then we can go back to this, and I think we can go. Oh, there it was. That's the photograph right there. That's the image that was taken from the Queen Mary as she was passing through the wreckage of the Curacoa just immediately after the collision.
And you can make out in that, because I know it's a very fuzzy image, but what you're seeing is the aft end of Curacoa. The tower on the Curacoa that had 3 stanchions is actually tipped over towards the Queen Mary in that photo.
Her tripod, she had a tripod mast, if I remember correctly.
He did.
Yes, and that one is, and you can see in the photo, is tipped over and pointing right at the hull of Queen Mary.
Yeah.
And then behind it was, I believe, a funnel.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and the funnel is still standing in the photo. Originally, I had thought that the black marks in the photo was just a dirty camera lens or something, but apparently it is the fuel oil that is launched into the air in big bullets.
I could believe that.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody's familiar with marine oil, but it you know, what's known as bunker sea oil, but it is literally like molasses when it is, unless it's superheated, which in the tanks that are assigned to be feeding the boiler specifically, they're going to be superheated, so they're turned into a much easier flow to where they can be pumped out. But the regular storage tanks for fuel, it's because of you're in the North Atlantic, you got a cool, cold condition, hull. That's actually like thick, like honey molasses consistency. And so if you were to suddenly, slice through a fuel tank, yeah, I could see it being blobs, black blobs. Absolutely.
Was this taken on the bow?
This
I think Alex is. Oh, this is. I'm sure this is taken on like the
this is taken
side.
about amidships on Queen Mary.
Yeah, I would.
Starboard side.
Yeah, starboard side. Yeah, I would agree. Starboard side.
Like I see the water, I can see the horizon line, but like relative to the ship, like where is this?
It's hard to say.
Yeah, because you can make out.
It's just
Let me go back
somewhere
to it.
amidships on sun deck.
I turned off of it, but
because you can make out. You can make out everything in the photo except the Queen Mary, really.
Well, yeah, you have to remember these cameras. This is from like the 1940s cameras back then, especially small ones. They were like super zoomed in. Yeah.
Well, I know, but this was also taken in like 2 seconds because
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't have any time to
focus. There exists a much better version of this photo, a much clearer version, but I do not know where to find it.
I think museums have it.
Isn't there one taken like more from the stern, like as she passed away from the initial collision? And that
I heard there were 2 photos.
Yeah,
this is one of them.
And you see the actual separate bow and stern sections of the ship sinking.
Yes, yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah,
I heard of it, but I've never seen the photo myself.
Yeah. All right, I'll go back to us, our smiling faces. But oh my gosh, yeah.
The survivors of the crash had floated among a layer of fuel oil in the water, but many of them had been exhausted and accidentally swallowed the fuel oil, and that suffocated them.
And that's typical of a lot of sinkings during World War II. I mean, even in other situations where you had fuel oil in the water, was because it's lighter than water, it will float on top, and your first instinct is to breathe. So you very typically breathe in or suck in through your mouth fuel oil, which I can't even imagine what that would be like. And that coats your lungs, it coats your stomach.
Once you breathe that in, it's done. There's no fixing that.
Yeah. Again, I gotta state that anybody who watches this video who has family members that are known to have passed on the HMS Curacoa, that we
our condolences.
Our condolences for your losses, and horrible situation. All right. Well, we're gonna cover one last official historical death, and then we're gonna move on. And I know Chris, you're probably wanting to. Chris has other things to
Yeah,
do today.
I kind of forgot the reason why I was even brought here in the first place. But yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna cover our personal encounters with the ship, and so we're gonna bring in Chris first. But the last thing we're gonna talk about really quick is Lars Horbor, who was the ship's. He was a not
cook.
line cook. He
I
he
thought
wasn't.
he was a salad chef.
Yeah.
I've heard several different explanations of what his position was, but nonetheless, he was working in the main kitchens on the last great cruise. And there are no photographs of Lars Horbor, who was nicknamed Lobster. And the reason why he was nicknamed Lobster was because, he had a little drink, and so he had a little bit of a reddish nose, and that's how he got the nickname of Lobster. So he was known as Lobster Horbor, and rather portly guy. Was working in the main kitchens on the last great cruise, and south of Rio de Janeiro on October the 2nd, I'm sorry, scratch that, November the 13th, 1967, he succumbed to heat stroke during the last great cruise. He was the last recorded death on board the Queen Mary. And as typical with a crew member on board, he was buried at sea, and there were a lot of passengers that attended his burial. I think I've even seen a photograph of the burial, but I don't know. I can't say for sure, but I think I've seen one somewhere. I think he was buried. I think his body was delivered to the sea from our deck.
From the access gangway?
I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's not from the sun deck. You don't drop it off in the sun deck.
No,
No,
too high.
I wouldn't
too
be
high.
too good.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would think that from that high up that you're gonna start to rip away the canvas that's the body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So,
So basically, every closed casket becomes an open casket. I get it. You
and
drop it
it's
from
it's
the
not
sun deck.
even a casket. I mean, it's literally like canvas wrapping, and
Yeah, they just wrap the body.
and they
Oh,
put
okay.
lead weights in the canvas wrapping to make sure that the body sinks.
Now, what I had heard about his death, there's a little bit more detail, which is that he shared a cabin with another kitchen crew member.
Yeah.
And his cabin was located down on what is today D deck, and right over one of the boiler rooms. So the cabin that he had was really, really warm. And on top of the fact that they were, passing through the equatorial region, or past it, I should say, it was really hot seas, and the cabin that they had measured the temperature was about 140 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And it was when he didn't really show up for his shift that his bunk mate, I don't know what you call them, but he went back to the room to see what's up with him, and he was laying in bed completely red, just totally red and sweaty, and essentially in like a comatose state.
Yeah.
And when they took him to the hospital, I think sometime later, this is where the information gets kind of fuzzy, but sometime later he did die from that. So
Right. Yeah, I had heard the same thing. You would have thought that, passing from heat stroke, it would have happened in the kitchens, and I had heard that it actually had happened in his cabin. Which
I initially heard the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had a thought on on him, and I forgot what it was. Yeah, no, it's not going to come back to me. But no, you brought up a good point though, because I had read the same thing though, Alex, about his cabin being located near the boiler rooms, which normally, when she was in transatlantic service, you didn't really have that kind of concern about the heat transfer from the boiler rooms into those cabins, and there was to some degree, but in some cases it was probably a benefit because you were in the cold North Atlantic. But but in this case, you're talking about water temperatures that are already into the 80s, possibly even low 90s, and so air conditioning. That was the problem with Queen Mary, was that she was designed to be in ocean temperatures in the 50s and the 40s and even in the 30s.
Right.
Her air conditioning systems were designed for heat load on board. We all give off heat. And so, you put 800 people into the dining room and okay, there's a heat load. And so the dining room was designed to handle that kind of heat load. You add 90-degree ocean water to a ship. Now you're talking about you're warming the hull. You're warming the hull. So there's a heat load right there. You've got still 800 people plus in the dining room, or 600 people in the lounge, let's say, and the condensers for the air conditioning systems were not designed for that kind of heat load, so they didn't work. It was like they didn't even exist, and in fact, they were even worse because they actually contributed to the water, the amount of water in the air, the humidity. They added to the humidity of the air. So whenever you add humidity, you're not going to get very good cooling. You need dry air to actually get sufficient cooling, and so it didn't work. Absolutely was a complete failure in the South Atlantic in our wintertime, their summertime. And
yeah, there's a story during the final voyage of a passenger who was looking for respite from the heat. They found the captain in the first class main lounge, and they went up to him. They said, "Captain, can you point me to the nearest air conditioned room?" And he looked at the passenger and said, "You're standing in it."
Yep, exactly. Yep. And then he said, "This is my wife." I have to explain really quick. If anybody's seen the Joan Crawford video of the last voyage of the Queen Mary, yeah, this was the Mary. There's a little section where where Captain Jones is in the lounge, and his wife Mary was with him there next to him, and so they had a recording of him saying, to the passenger that he's being introduced to, "This is my wife." And so the post-production editing crew decided to have fun with it, and they just repeated it over and over. "This is my wife. This is my wife." And so we have a little bit of fun with that. But
yeah, I checked that clip too, and I made sure. And every time when you hear that play, it's the same clip over and over. You can hear the same people in the background talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fox Starline makes a comment about Ralph Rushton, and you know what? If anybody were to come back to haunt the Queen Mary, I would hope it would be Ralph Rushton, because I mean, I never had the opportunity to meet him. I talked to him in Facebook, numerous times, and my God, what an unbelievable gentleman, an unbelievable crew member.
Certainly.
And sad that he left us before I had the chance to even get the opportunity to meet him in person. I don't know Kipper got to meet him in person. But my goodness, yeah, I would say,
What a man.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
He should be one to gladly, proudly haunt the Queen Mary if he can.
His
Absolutely.
girlfriend, as he called it.
Yeah, his
Mhm.
girlfriend. Yes, that's right. The Queen
Yeah.
Mary was his girlfriend. Yeah. Yeah, and Captain Mar. Moonzer mentions Captain Mar. Uh, Captain Mar was definitely another person that man, another true gentleman that represented the queens,
Hmm.
both queens, the Queen Elizabeth more than the
John
Queen Mary.
Treasure Jones as well.
Yep, John Treasure Jones.
Of course,
Yep,
we can't forget him and his connection to this great ship.
yep. I think whether you believe in ghosts or not believe in ghosts, I mean, just his presence, their presence, their
I must
their character and their spirit, I think still
Mhm.
haunts the Queen Mary.
say the ship does give a lot of energy to her.
Yeah,
You may or may not believe in spirits, but you will get a sense of energy on board. Some
absolutely.
kind of energy you cannot explain. And despite whether you want to believe she's haunted or not, that's up to you.
I would agree.
But the amount of energy, some places it's stronger and some places it's weaker. But if you go into some of those special places, you'll feel it
Oh,
more than you will in other places
I
with
have
the
to
history.
I have to read this really quick. Kipper said I met him. He was a great guy. He actually called me a week before he died, like he knew he was leaving, and he was saying goodbye to me one last time. Oh,
Wow.
yeah. That's great that he was able to call you before his passing, and I'm glad you had that experience.
Man.
But Milad touched base on energy, and so let's bring in our experiences, and I will bring in Alex and Chris on this, on your recent
Okay.
Okay.
energetic experience on the Queen Mary.
Yes.
Energetic, yes.
So as I was mentioning earlier in the live stream that I often ask Chris to go to the Queen Mary to film footage for me to make my Queen Mary repair update videos and stuff like that. So it's you know we he doesn't go there with the idea in mind that he's going to be ghost hunting or anything, you know. It's always about the business of finding the right footage. And in this particular instance, uh, he was on B deck forward, near the third class staircase. I was telling him about the various rooms in that particular area, you know, and I told him, okay, now move over to the former synagogue because I want to see if there's a sign on the door that says it was the synagogue, just like how the nursery next to it still says nursery. And he walked up to the door. And why don't you explain it, Chris,
Okay,
from here?
so I was walking up to the door and I have my headphones on. I don't have them with me right now, but they're these little Sony headphones and they go in your ear like this, right? Completely Bluetooth. And I remember walking up to the door and all of a sudden, in my right ear, I hear, I'm like, I'm recording and I stop. I'm like, what the hell was that? That was weird. And Alex is like, what the hell is that? I'm like, I heard like someone whispering in my ear. And then you heard it as well, right, Alex?
I did. I heard it at the same time. That's why I was like, wait a minute, what did you hear? Because
Yeah, I
I
was
heard
like,
something
I heard
too.
like whispering, and I was like, I was weird, and I was like, oh, that's strange. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought like the whole deck we were on, like my headphones kept like disconnecting. It was really strange, only in that area. Sometimes maybe a lot of metal can get in the way, but that's the first time I ever heard someone like speak into my ear. It was like really, really well, it wasn't clear, but it didn't sound like it came from the headphone
Yeah.
because the headphone, when you have headphones on, you can hear where the sound is coming from, right? The headphones, it sounds like it's coming from here, right? But then with that one, it felt like it was coming from inside of my ear. It was really weird. That's why it kind of freaked me out a little bit. Okay, it sounded really close. And then
Yeah.
but what were you saying, Alex?
I was gonna just say that, yeah, I heard it very faintly in the call. It was just like it was very indistinguishable. It's just
Yeah, I hear that.
like a whisper.
So I,
Yeah.
I want to point out really quick. You were in the third class staircase on B deck.
Yes.
Okay, so
You have to ask Alex to make sure. I'm not too sure.
Yes,
so
he was third.
Oh yeah, so I am showing the third class staircase on B deck, and this is actually the deck arrangement as it is today. And you were facing the nursery room, weren't you?
Yes.
No, he was facing the synagogue.
Oh, the synagogue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All I know is that I was facing a door.
So
Yeah.
so actually, if everybody looks at the screen, where you see there's up and up on the staircase, so right above and to the right of the upper up, right near where the line 260 shows, there's a door that's shown in the drawing there, and he was actually at that doorway that would lead into what was the synagogue for the ship. Now,
Yeah.
now
you said it was above 260, but he was standing below 260.
Below 260,
yeah, I'm sorry, 259. I'm sorry, 261, because we go up towards the bow.
Yeah, and he was at the bottom end of that.
Right.
That center line.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Well, anyways, we didn't really think anything of that thing. I was thinking to myself, it's just my headphones freaking out. I didn't really care, even though that I did say it was weird because I felt like someone was following me around. I would always turn around and then there'd be no one there. I did. Actually, there's one time I freaked out that cleaner. Remember, Alex? Because I was like, "Whoo!" And then like they were there because I swear someone was following me, and apparently they were following me, and I freaked her out. I'm not sure if you remember that.
I don't remember that, but I do remember that right after you walked away from the synagogue, you went around to the other side to where the synagogue has a back door, because I had you film the back door.
Yeah.
And you stood there, and as you were filming it for me, and I have that on camera too, is that you said it's really strange. It feels like there's somebody following me, you know. And but that was on the other end of the ship, like where you saw the worker was on the aft end of the ship.
But then,
so it was in a completely different area.
But still, it was like that whole deck we were on. It felt like someone was following me. It was very, very strange. I don't know why, but again, I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, whatever. It's just the ship is like the vibrations of the ship. It's just my headphones freaking out. And then I went home. I gave Alex the footage, and then I think you can take it from here, Alex. What happened?
Yes, because I had the footage, and I was very eager to hear if he caught the voice on the footage, which he didn't. There was no sound of the voice in the footage. But what I did find is that in the footage, as he backed away from the door after hearing that voice, in the corner of the screen, you could see an orb, a very blue orb, just very quickly just flitter about, go into the wall, and come back out again, and then disappear.
And I don't know about the rest of you, but whenever I hear the word orb discussed in photographs, I immediately like dismiss it, because 99% of the time it's usually like a dust speck.
It's dust.
Dust or bug, or
Right. So when I watched that video, Alex, I couldn't believe it. Like, there was no explanation for that orb. None.
No, yeah, because dust moves in a very particular way.
Yeah,
right? That orb moves really strangely.
Curly Q, like it went a little curly Q motion into the wall, disappeared, and then came out and floated away.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
I have seen dust my whole life move in the light. I know what it looks like. People have tried to tell me, "Oh, that's a gnat." No, that's not how gnats move, and they don't glow blue.
Yeah.
And then people tell me it's like lens flare. It was definitely not lens flare.
Right.
No, that's not lens flare.
That particular
yeah,
section,
Chris can tell you.
My
Chris
lens does not.
Chris works with-
I bought a lens specifically so it does not get lens flare. That lens does not get lens flare.
Mhm.
So,
and
yeah.
it's pretty dark in that section anyways too.
Mhm.
There would be no light bright enough to do that. Yeah.
Milad, didn't you
Yeah.
say that you've had an experience in B deck forward?
Well, not B deck forward, particularly in Shaft Alley. I have on starboard Shaft Alley. This was when I was kind of into the spirit side of the Queen Mary as well as the historical side. But that phase is kind of spiritual side has kind of died out so much on the Queen Mary. But I was on door 13 or by door 13 by a few minutes, or for a few minutes, I would say, maybe 5-6 minutes at the most. And so I get bored, nothing's happening. I go up that escalator, and mind you, as I go up the escalator, I swear on my life, I could feel what I felt like was a cold hand touch the back of my shoulder. And it felt like a cold hand. There was nobody in my proximity to do that. So I just got so jumped, I bolted up the escalators and back into the exhibit hall. It was something I couldn't explain and can't explain.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't
I had
expecting
a-
something like that.
I had a similar experience, sort of, in 2020. I was visiting the Queen Mary with Chris and my other friend Steve, and Steve and Chris, when we went through the boiler, I'm sorry, the engine room, they went to the port side shaft alley, and they were walking that way. I went to the starboard side shaft alley and was walking aft. And I was trying to film and just, show, because I was going to make like a vlog to talk about my experience on the Queen Mary. And I'm walking through there, and I swear on my left side, I could see someone walking on the catwalk between the two shafts. It was like a dark shadow figure. And I pointed the camera in that direction, kind of like, oh, like, is there someone there? But there was nobody there when I looked, and it doesn't show up on the footage at all. But I could swear there was like a shadow figure there. And I never like considered it, anything. Like, I never discussed it for a long time because I didn't think it was anything. And then a year or two later, I found out that area is known for people seeing a shadow figure on the catwalks. And I was like, whoa, like, I did not expect that.
Yeah. Shilo, have you had any experiences like that on board?
A few, yes. One was actually in the engine room. It was very odd. I didn't see any in the engine room in particular. I didn't really see anything, but it was more something left behind, I guess. So, when you're walking down the diamond plate rubber that goes down to the control panel.
Yep.
But it's that secondary landing. It's that small landing before you get to the actual control panel landing. So right on that little landing was a wet footprint, a singular wet footprint, a bare foot, and it was right before the closing time of the engine room. So to me, I don't know why anybody would have gone down there, wet a singular foot, dipped it on the diamond plate, and walked off. Because if they're trying to do it to get a reaction out of people, why would you do it right before closing?
Right.
And it certainly didn't last there all day. There's no way it would have lasted there all day. It looked like it was fresh when I showed up there.
Should have got down on your knees and tasted it and make sure it was real.
And I have a picture of it. I don't know where it went, but I have a picture of it somewhere.
Okay, so I have to make a call out really quick. That's got to be your mom. Shilo, tell him.
No, we were together the whole time.
No.
Oh,
Martina CZ. in the chat.
Oh, that, yeah. I thought you were talking about it did that. No, I didn't.
Yeah, your mom.
I wasn't reading it.
Your mom's reminding you to tell them about the wet footprint. I was like, that's very convenient.
I thought you meant you were messing with me. No. But yeah, so we both saw that wet footprint, and it was just like, it's just, out of all the ghost stories you hear, it's just not something. I think it was a ghost or something related, because seriously, who would do that?
Yeah.
Right before closing time. how would you wet? And it was a perfect wet footprint. Like, because if you would have, done that, in the spur of the moment, it wouldn't have looked perfect. This was a perfect wet footprint.
But
Wait,
this,
No
so what was it, like water on the ground, or was it just like what was it exactly?
It was a footprint of a foot, but it was made out of water. Like, there was no puddle, there was no.
It wasn't a
just
puddle.
literally-
It was like basically almost like an outline of like
Yeah.
residue. Okay.
Like when you go to a pool and somebody gets out and
yeah. Okay, like
it
that.
was like that, but in reverse. Like, it wasn't seeped into it. It was. Yeah, I don't know how to. I literally don't know how to describe it.
Because rubber doesn't
Really weird.
absorb water, so the water is going to pool on top of the rubber.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, there were no imperfections, and then it must have been fresh because it was in the direct path of when you walk down the steps. So somebody would have stepped on it. So, and it was perfectly intact. So I have no explanation for that. And on B deck, I had not to that, but I've had some experiences. Like when you're walking down the hallway, it feels like somebody's following you. Like Chris said, like it's always. I don't feel like that on any other deck except B deck.
Yeah.
It's always that deck.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just stuff like that. Oh yeah, and then on B deck again. This was in the middle of the night, and it was like a tapping, but it was coming from the underside or upper side of the ceiling.
Yeah.
So it wasn't coming from the deck above. It was coming directly from the floor.
What
the
deck
ceiling.
was this on?
B deck.
Okay.
And I think it was halfway between the corridor from the third class staircase to the first class staircase landing.
Well,
that cabin stairwell.
I got to admit to everybody who's watching the video, if you ever get the opportunity to stay on the Queen Mary overnight, if you want to experience some sort of unexplainable condition, experience, circumstance, yeah, right. Stay on the Queen Mary and plan on being up late. Venture through the ship at 1, 2, maybe even 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's what I do when I'm on board and I spend the night.
It's
quite fun to do it. You don't even have to be doing it for spirit.
No.
No,
wander through the ship. Just go down the
That's
the
the whole
hotel
point of the
corridors.
experience.
And usually, when you're doing that, when you're walking around not expecting anything, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I'd agree.
Or you can get Long Beach $1,000 to stay in room 340.
Well, luckily they have not opened that back up to guests.
Okay.
And we will talk about B340 in a minute, but
my mom just reminded me of one more story that we had. Yes. So it was in the pool.
Yes.
I think this was the last time it was in the pool.
Yes.
And it's another thing with orbs. You can probably see it in the chat.
Yeah.
But we were standing on the balcony that's right next to the spinning door entrance. That's port side. So on that little tiny bend. Yeah. We were standing there, and she had the camera. She was trying to take a picture of the inside of the pool, and there was absolutely nothing in sight. And all of a sudden, this it was almost colored blue, just like in Alex's video or Chris's video. It was blue, and it charged towards the camera, and then disappeared, and it made us duck.
Gentlemen,
there's something special about the color blue.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Milad. What was that?
I'm gonna have to head out. I have to get ready for my
plans
for the rest of the day.
That's right.
Yeah. No other plans, but anyhow, it was such a great honor to be on the channel. I look forward to other live streams and your channel, and I do want to take the time before I head out to thank Steve for his great level of work and effort into the channel. He's made it look so wonderful now with the streams, and each video that pertains to the Queen Mary and his history, it gives a great description of the ship so far, and I do appreciate the work that you do for the ship and her legacy.
Thanks, Milad. I enjoy being around
Yes,
you,
of course.
hanging out with you, and I will see you
Thank you.
next
Thank you.
Saturday.
Thank you. See you soon. See you everyone
Bye.
soon, and likewise to Shilo as well, and everyone else for, spreading the history and legacy of the ship. Take care, everybody.
See you
Bye-bye.
later,
Bye,
Milad.
Milad.
I'm
Take
alive.
care. Take care. Take care.
And then there were 4. All right.
I was just gonna say that.
That's
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say that was probably one of the biggest stories in that on our deck that I have is the pool. You know,
You know,
and it wasn't anything that
it's funny. The pool is probably the most common talked about place for experiences, and
yeah.
I've got 2 stories, but I'm only going to have one. I'm only going to talk about one because we are short on time. But this would be 1996 when I was still a tour guide on board. I had just finished a tour, bringing people through the swimming pool, and I would bring them through the set of double doors out onto our deck, into the foyer, and we would walk them out to the gangway, and that would basically be where we would say goodbye to them. After I had said goodbye to this tour group that I had a couple that asked me if I could take them back into the swimming pool to show them the changing rooms, because at that time we didn't take people into the changing rooms. So, at the same time, my friend Mario, who was like the lead tour guide for attractions, came down and I was like, "Hey Mario, you want to come with me to show them the changing rooms?" He's like, "Oh, sure." So me and Mario, we took this couple down into the changing rooms, and there were no lights on in the changing rooms. It was completely dark, and you can't really see anything in there because it's dark. But I knew where there's a light switch inside the changing rooms where you could turn it on and it turns on a light in the changing rooms. But I went in there, I turned on the light, nothing, no lights. So I went out onto C deck on the starboard side, and right by the doors on C deck on the starboard side is a breaker box, and that's where the breakers are for the swimming pool. So I went to the breaker box and I checked to make sure that all the breakers were set and not tripped or anything. Nothing, not a thing. I came back into the swimming pool. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't understand why the lights aren't working, but you can walk through and take a look in the changing rooms. And so they walked through, and me and Mario kind of guided them out. But as we came up the stairs and came to the balcony, as we were walking down the balcony towards the exit to get onto our deck foyer, the couple stopped and said, "Hey, the lights are on." It's like, what are you talking about? And so I looked, and the lights in the changing rooms were on. I can't give any explanation as to why they were on, why they weren't on when we turned them on. But yeah, so apparently somebody didn't want us to see the changing rooms, showing them to the couple. But when we were leaving, that was okay. They turned the lights on for us. So that's my one creepy, unexplainable experience that I had on the ship. So, I want to talk about the ghost stories that have been brought up in the past. And I know, let's see, who was it? I know Kipper brought it up, but I would say without a doubt, the Lady in White would be the most common historical ghost experience on board, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, the Lady in White goes back to the 70s at the very least. Alex, do you know anything about the Lady in White?
I know only what is told on tour today, but I don't know anything about her in history.
Yeah.
No.
Weren't you saying?
Go ahead, Shilo.
What?
Oh, I thought you had like a theory that she was a war bride.
Okay, so
That
actually, I
fell.
wanted to ask. I wanted to
I don't
ask
think that
Chris
was me.
first. Chris, do you know much about the Lady in White?
I do know that she appears in either the piano in, I forgot where it was. It's a piano in the Queen Mary, I think somewhere close to the lobby. And then she also appears in the third class area. That's all I really know about her. Historically, I don't know much about her.
Okay, so are you getting that information from the recent tour groups by chance?
Yes,
Aha.
that's what they say. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna play a little bit of historical ghost story with BS ghost story. So the Lady in White was a ghost that had been talked about since the 70s. This dates, everybody talks about Disney being the originator of the BS ghost story lore on the Queen Mary, and there were ghost stories that went way before Disney even came onto the scene, and and those stories, whether you want to believe them or not, and I'm going to leave everybody up to their own personal opinions on what they believe, but the Lady in White really has a good story to tell. And the Lady in White was originally seen in the either the main lounge, which is known as the Queen Salon today, or sometimes in the passenger corridors in the hotel. And she's in a white gown, like a white evening gown, typically 1940s era dress. And the story goes that she may have been a war bride, and that she was on board during the what was known as Operation Baby Carriage, which was when the Queen Mary was traveling to New York from England, 1946, taking the war brides from Europe and England, mainly England, to the United States with their husbands, which were usually, American or Canadian GIs. So supposedly this war bride was, I don't know, I guess you could say mail order. that's kind of like 1800s talk, but she kind of met her husband through like some kind of a service, I guess, and was supposed to meet her actual husband on the Queen Mary during that voyage. And I guess it was, her voyage would have been prearranged. They may have even gotten married, but the husband was supposed to meet her on board, and they were supposed to rendezvous at the piano of the stage of the main lounge in first class. And he didn't show up. And so she came there every night on the voyage, thinking maybe he got delayed on that night, he didn't show up. And so she came there every night, and of course came to the United States, never met her husband. So the thought is that she is a war bride that, passed away, probably in her old age, and her spirit has come back to the ship, and she's attached to the piano that was on the stage. Now, in the 70s, the original piano was on the stage in the first class lounge, in the Queen's Salon. In the early 80s, they moved that piano to the Sir Winston's piano bar up beyond Sundeck, which is what's there today. When Sir Winston's reopens, it'll be there. You'll get to see it. but her spirit actually transferred. Like she was now spotted in Sir Winston's and at the piano bar. Um, so she moved with the piano, which was very interesting. As time progressed, that story kind of went away. You didn't hear much about the Lady in White. What really, really pisses me off, and this is where I call the BS story, is that the tour guides today are talking again about the Lady in White. This time, they talk about the Lady in White with the piano in the lobby, which is not. Alex, tell me, is that an original piano from the Queen Mary?
That I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you right now.
That was the trump card part.
Wait a minute. So Shilo will tell me will agree with me. That's not an original piano from the Queen Mary. In fact, the piano that is in the lobby today on A deck is probably from. Oh gosh, I mean it could
the
be
media.
Yeah, I've heard the media of all Cunard ships. It may have came from the media. But it was a piano that came on board the Queen Mary probably in the 60s, maybe late 50s, that replaced the piano in the second class lounge. And if you look at photographs of the second class lounge, which would be the flamenco room, I should show a picture of that.
Yeah. And it's got the piano in there.
Yeah, it's got the piano in there. You can tell that is the piano that is currently in the lobby today. So these I don't want to call them stupid. No, that's not the right word. These ill-advised, uninformed, ill-informed,
dim-witted
tour guides. Or at least the people who have written the tour guide manuals have advised the tour guides to tell their guests that the Lady in White is now associated with this piano that's in the hotel lobby, which they claim is 90 years old, and it's not 90 years old. They also claim that it's about ready to fall apart, which, by the way, they hire somebody to come and play the piano, at 6, 7 o'clock in the evenings on Saturdays and Sundays. So it's not going to fall apart.
And they regularly hire somebody to bring it to tune it.
Yeah, right.
So
right. And, oh my gosh. So me and Shilo and Milad were in the lobby bar area when they were giving a tour, a ghost tour, and we were all quiet. We were we were silent. And we were listening to the tour guide talk to her guests, and it was a girl, and I don't know her name, not going to say her name. She was telling the guests about the Lady in White. She was talking about the piano, and all of a sudden she talks about how the piano and the ghosts were related to the Mauritania room, which is the third class garden lounge. That's way forward on main deck. And as soon as she said the Mauritania room, me and Milad and Shilo, all three at the same time, simultaneously, said, "The Mauritania room," which I think she stopped, right? Didn't she freeze?
She did.
She froze in the middle of her tour group. We didn't mean to say it out loud, but we just like, what the hell are you talking about? The Mauritania room, and of course she said it.
She stopped for like a good 4 seconds, and then she finished something up, and then she moved them further down the hall.
Yeah. She was like, "I can't wait to get the hell out of here." So that's I've got to call BS on the tour guides talking about the Lady in White and the piano in the hotel lobby. That is a complete BS story because go ahead.
I was gonna say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I was thinking that is pretty far away. How does the Lady in White appear in that one room and then like all of a sudden appeared in that other place, like that piano. It didn't make sense to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I never really questioned it. I'm like, I don't know any better, so I'm like, whatever.
And it's different classes too. First class,
Yeah.
main lounge, third class, garden lounge.
Yeah.
Like,
I have to point out, Mike makes the comment, Steve needs a shave. Yeah, Mike, I know. When I work on the train car, when I go to Arizona, I don't shave. And so I've been back since Tuesday, and I haven't had a chance to shave yet. So that's how
It's a political statement.
Yeah, that's right.
it's
Exactly.
Yeah, Steve will shave once all the tour guides get their information right.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's never.
That's it, exactly.
Until then, he's boycotting the razor.
Right, exactly. The other historical ghost things I just want to talk about briefly are, well, let's bring up Jackie, and I know that some people in the chat brought up Jackie. Okay, let's start with Chris. What do you know about Jackie?
Well, okay, so what I know of Jackie, this is just purely from what the tour guides say. She is like the Queen Mary's most powerful spirit. She appears in the swimming pool room, talks with the captain of the Queen Mary, and she also has been known to like travel around the ship, and when the Spruce Goose was still in the dome, used to be spotted like walking around on the wings of the Spruce Goose.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard. Now, this kind of coincides, and I want to get Shiloh's opinion, and I want to get Alex's opinion on Jackie too, but so I have heard that Jackie may not necessarily be a ghost. That she might actually be a demon. Which would make more sense in her mischievousness, her ways of wanting to trick people. Yeah, she wants deceptiveness. She wants to be very deceptive and portray the little girl persona, the figure of a little girl.
Yeah.
And for her to leave the Queen Mary and go over to the Spruce Goose, that kind of follows along with that, don't you think?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also they labeled the most powerful, right? Her.
Well, the tour guide that was with, she or he labeled her as the most powerful because she was spotted over the Spruce Goose.
But that's what I'm saying, though. What Steve is saying, it coincides with that title.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
And
but they also say that the
I was just
they say that the dressing boxes are like a...
Go ahead. Finish your sentence.
Well, they were saying that they always say the dressing boxes act like an antenna, like it draws, them in. That's where they come from.
So what I've understood is that the area between the dressing boxes and the shower on the starboard side of the ship is a vortex.
Yeah.
The gateway between our world and the spiritual world, which could make sense in the fact that it could be a demon.
So yeah, when I was at the Nicole Strickland thing for the Queen Mary, she said that, I forgot who said it, but it makes sense too, that all the materials to make a crystal radio, I believe it is all there. And that's what would make sense, because all the materials needed are already in the pool room.
Oh, well, yeah, and you've got quartz in the ceiling.
Yeah,
and quartz is a material that's used in making radio antennas. Radio frequency and chips.
Yep, and you have the metal in there, you have everything. Especially when water was in there, too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Alex, what do you know about Jackie?
So I think everything about Jackie and the vortex is complete bull. Because I have spoken to a former Disney Imagineer who was one of the people that Disney brought to the ship to collect any ghost stories that already existed in order to start preparing and making their various ghost themed attractions and tours. And when I had asked him about Jackie, because that story kind of came up, he was like, "Oh, he's like, that's just it's completely fake, you know."
Mm.
And so, you know, I was in conversation with him, and he ended up kind of talking about how they needed a ghost story that would kind of throw people. You know, you hear about the Lady in White, which he did say that was a story that previously existed and was told to them by a housekeeper, and they wrote it down and they kind of embellished the story from there.
Yeah.
But that they needed something that was more deceptively innocent, so they decided on a little girl, and they were kind of like creating a story around that. And being in typical Disney nature, they don't like to tell a story about a place without coming up with an origin. So they decided that they would kind of say that the origin of all the ghosts on the ship come from this portal. And so when it was asked like where would the portal be on the ship, they thought, oh, the pool room, of course. But you know, we can't let people literally see the portal because it would, you know, everybody would always be asking, where's the portal? How do we find it? And so they put it in, you know, in the dressing room, because you can't see the dressing room when you're standing on the balcony.
Right.
So so they kind of did that, and then that's when they created they did a little show where they had like, I don't know how he described it, but I didn't understand it. They did this weird thing where like you could see like a swirl of mist or something, so that way it would look like the portal was opening, and you know, they would do a little show. He told me about how they had put little vinyl cutouts of footprints on the floor around the pool to make it look like if you walked around the pool in a certain way,
legends,
the
right
light would catch it.
That's what they did it for.
Yeah, and
yeah.
There's a video clip of that on YouTube.
Yeah,
Really?
and like you would see the footprint kind of catch the light, and so you would think it was a footprint of water and stuff. And so he kind of described all this, and I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And he goes, exactly. He goes, you know, we told the story that Jackie drowned in the second class swimming pool. So what's she doing in the first class swimming pool? You know, like. And then, of course, as everybody here knows, that children were not allowed in the pool rooms. You know, so
Exactly.
it's just,
exactly.
Yeah, so that's why, you know, some people tell me, oh, but I've seen or I've heard Jackie. I'm like, you saw or heard something, but it certainly wasn't Jackie. You know, and I think that, you know, people, when they're told to expect something like a ghost, they will soon see it. And so I think in terms of Jackie, I think people think they see or hear Jackie because they're expecting to. And so I don't know. It is possible that there are other ghosts in that room. I just don't believe specifically that Jackie herself or the portal are even a thing, because the guy told me it wasn't. He was like, we made this up. We designed this as part of the show.
Yeah.
And it just kind of took off from there because, you know, Disney's very good at storytelling. You know, they give you a reason to believe all these things. And he told me a lot about B340 as well. So
they used to.
Yeah, and especially because there's no document of anybody dying in the pool or drowning or anything, and especially the fact that no kids were allowed in the pool. So it's just
we're approaching the 2-hour mark, and I want to touch bases really quick on B340, and then I want to get everybody's opinion on their overall thought on the paranormal spiritual world with the Queen Mary in closing. But let's go first with B340. I would say that out of all the, if we were to rank the BS scale on any story that has ever been told about anything concerning the Queen Mary and a ghost or a murder or a killing, yeah, I would say B340 ranks on the, you know, it's an 11 on a scale of 10
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think B340 is actually like I think it's true because if you book the room, like every single time you go to the room, the ghost always hunts you exactly the same. That's like that's how ghost works, right? It always happens the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
They tell you exactly the
always
same thing.
happens like on cue, the lights flicker
They're
on
trained.
cue, the knocking, the water turns on. Like that's just how ghosts work in real life, right?
Isn't
They're well
that
trained.
funny? Yeah, they're trained
Yeah.
ghosts, but they're not on the payroll.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I have even thought about the possibility that there could be some truth to the idea of B3. Well, let's back up. So the story of B340 in a nutshell is a husband and wife and 2 children are traveling in a cabin that is supposed to be B340, but actually B340 in her sailing days didn't exist. That cabin today is actually the space of 2 cabins. But nonetheless, a husband and wife, 2 children are traveling in this cabin. From what I understand, towards New York, so from Southampton to New York, and something occurs to where the husband strangles the 2 children. I don't know what he does to the wife. I would assume that he strangles the wife, and then he shoots himself. And so it's a murder-suicide. And the story goes is that Cunard did not want the story to get out to the public because they thought it would be negative press on for public relations, and so they kept the murder-suicide a secret. But nonetheless, this murder-suicide took place on board. There is absolutely no evidence to show that this ever took place. Any comments on this so far?
I can just imagine how the dad went on doing it. It was like, okay, who's next?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me and Shilo were talking about that. Like, how do you strangle one child without like the wife and the other child like trying to stop you from doing it?
Yeah, I know.
Well, not even that. You would think that the other kid would see what's going on and either bang on the door or run in the hallway and flag a steward.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And the wall's really thin too. I don't know
Yeah,
if
exactly.
people-
Yeah.
I mean, even with the ship in service, you can still hear the people next door. Yeah.
Yeah. So
There's even a version of the story that says that the master at arms locked him in that room until they could get to port, but when they opened the room, he was found dismembered.
oh God, that sounds like a warped-minded tour guide.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what better than to say, yeah, he was found dismembered.
But I mean, you also can't lock. Yeah, from what I understand, you can't lock guests in rooms, can you?
You could, yeah. The steward.
You could?
Yeah, sure,
No.
absolutely. Yeah, because
The
passengers did not.
steward the keys.
Yeah, passengers did not have keys to their cabins. You basically were
Oh,
allowed. You basically kept your cabin unlocked unless you wanted to, for some specific reason, keep it locked, and then you would have to ask your cabin steward to lock the door for you, and they would have a key and they could lock the door. But you weren't given a key to your cabin when you boarded the ship.
Yeah. My mom was saying that unless it's in the middle of the night, but that still wouldn't have made a difference because stewards were still in the hallways at night.
Yeah.
They were still patrolling around to see if the indicator lights had gone off.
Oh yeah.
Now,
go ahead.
If I may, I was reading somewhere to try to like debunk this, and I totally forgot because Chris asked me the other day. He goes, "Where'd you hear this?" But I totally forgot where. But maybe somebody who's watching this can look it up as well and see if they can find the source. But I was reading that the source of this story was actually taken from a similar story, where a man in England had murdered his family. And I think he was found dead. He wasn't found dismembered, but he was found dead. And the thing was that this happened right as the grandmother of the family was on a voyage aboard the Queen Mary, and she was in second class, not not anywhere near B340.
Right.
But they decided that that murder suicide is a great story, and it has some tie to
Queen
reality
Mary.
because the grandmother was there, and then so they just kind of put it into B340. But yeah,
I remember you telling me about this, Alex, when I think when we almost first met. What was that, about 4 years?
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago? And yeah, I remember that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's another story about B340 that I don't know if you guys know it, but that this was back when the ship was still at sea. There was a woman who was basically going to bed for the night. She got in her bed and pulled the covers over her. And in the middle of the night, she wakes up because she feels the covers being pulled off of her. And she sees a dark figure standing at the end of her bed with red eyes that looked right into her. And she insisted that she be moved to another cabin after that. She was freaked out. Now, apparently, that story is of a situation that actually did happen. There was a woman who was in her cabin and she thought she saw someone standing over the end of her bed. I don't know with red eyes, but standing over the end of her bed and pulling the covers off. And the thing was, though, is that supposedly her cabin was not even anywhere near B340. It was like on M deck somewhere. And the thing was that according to the crew, she went to bed early that night because of the fact that she drank so heavily in the observation bar. So she was really drunk when that happened.
I would never have that experience before. I have no idea what she's talking about.
I almost like revealed something. No, yeah, that's fine. But yeah.
No,
That's actually the first story I've heard of B340.
That's what?
What was that?
That's what you just told was the first story I've heard of B340.
Yeah. No, I remember Alex telling me about that, and it made complete sense to me when he told it to me. Because and I think, didn't you have a newspaper article about it, right?
I did, but I have no idea where it went.
I think you had a newspaper article that was talking about them contacting the family member that was on the Queen Mary. The murder had already taken place, and the article was about them contacting the family member on board the ship. I can't remember if it was a British newspaper or if it was an American newspaper, but it all made sense.
Yeah, I think it was a British one, but yeah, I have no idea where that. It's so weird. I collect all this stuff, all these sources and information, so I could use them as citations later, when I need to, and then they disappear.
Yeah,
it disappears in my files.
It does the same thing with me too. Well, oh my gosh. Okay, so I was not even thinking that we were going to cover 2 hours on this, and we could at least cover another hour, because I was even going to want to talk about like the YouTube ghost hunters of the Queen Mary.
Oh God.
We could cover a whole hour of YouTube ghost hunters. But yeah, I think we're gonna skip that. Okay, so last comments really quick on your opinions of the Queen Mary and the paranormal and the spiritual world.
May I go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll make it quick. So I do believe the Queen Mary is haunted, especially after seeing that orb. And then, of course, the shadow figure, which I later figured out was a common occurrence in that area of the ship. So I do believe the Queen Mary is haunted. However, these over-the-top stories that are told about, Jackie, the portal, the various, goblins and ghouls of the ship, those, I believe, Even the ones I was directly told were made up by Disney people, and the ones that I was not directly told, if it's a really out of this world story, I do not believe it. I believe the stuff where people tell me they hear something, they feel a tap on the shoulder, they see a little orb, or maybe they feel a cold presence. I believe that stuff. I
Okay.
don't believe these exorbitant stories.
Yeah, I agree with that. Chris, what's your thoughts?
For me, honestly, like the Queen Mary throughout her whole life, like I'd say like 99% of everyone on board of that ship had positive experiences. So, and people say ghosts are energy and whatever. So if ghosts are positive, if you have a positive experience, you're gonna leave a positive experience behind. Maybe you might be a little playful. Maybe you might see like, oh, a shadow figure and or touching here and there or whatever. But it's like that's what I would expect to hear from something that's like positive energy.
Right.
Anything that's like negative, like, oh, you hear the ghost is trying to kill you. Oh, the ghost is doing this. He's trying to scare you. I don't know, all these crazy over the top stories. I don't think those are 100% false, because like, again, like, I don't think there was any malicious hate toward like the ship,
Yeah.
nor the people on the ship had toward anybody.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense that there would be these horrific over the top stories. So yeah, that's what I think.
totally agree. And you mentioned about energy, and I'm gonna finish this up, and then I'm gonna let Shilo end, but I'm gonna let Shilo end with a little caveat, and because I had brought this up in the original description of the video, we're gonna talk about Mark Fein. So I'm gonna let Shilo talk about Mark Fein, but I just wanted to make the comment that I believe that the Queen Mary, as a structural entity, has the ability to absorb energy. And just as you said, 99% of the people that have been aboard the Queen Mary, who have sailed aboard the Queen Mary, who have visited, stayed in the hotel, gone to a prom, a winter formal, a business banquet, that's all positive energy. And I think that the ship has the ability to absorb all energy, and somehow, some way, couldn't give you the explanation. Whether the electromagnetic things are correct in the atmosphere, whether you've got the right humidity. The ship is able to replay that energy like a tape recorder, like a video recorder. It can play audio and video back. And I think that a lot of times what people see aren't necessarily a ghost or an apparition. That they are witnessing a replay, a playback of something that took place, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even 70, 80 years ago. The ship has that ability to play back that energy. And I think that's what can explain a lot of the experiences that people have had on board. Go ahead, Shilo, what's your thoughts? And then talk about Mark Fein really quick.
So I agree with all of you on that stance that, everybody who's 99% of everybody who's been on the ship, either in, on sailing on her, visiting her in Long Beach, or even just people who lived in, Southampton, who always saw the 3 red funnels or orange funnels. They
Right.
just knew they associated with happiness.
Right.
So, whenever people talk about ghost stories, of the over the top nature, I don't believe them at all. But when it's the subtle things, I do believe them, because I don't think there's anything malicious on the ship. I don't think anything is out there to get you. And when people say, when they go, oh, I want to go to Queen Mary, I want to see a ghost. Well, it's not going to be what you think. You're not going to walk onto the gangway, walk around prom deck for 2 minutes, and there, boom, you're going to see an apparition. I think it's it's something that if you don't pay attention to, you're going to miss it, because it's not right in your face. It's something subtle,
Yep.
And just like, again, to bring up Chris's video, and when Alex was with him on the video call, is that they weren't even expecting that, and it just happened.
Right.
And if they weren't paying that close attention to the video, if they hadn't gone back and looked at the video and saw the little blue orb, they would have missed that probably. So it's just the little details that you could miss, and I think those are the real presence, either being replayed back in history, from history, like you said, or it's them just trying to tell you, hey, I'm here.
Yep. No, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right, tell us about Mark Fein.
All right, the thing here.
So pushy.
So Mark Fein was a what he was for a living. He was what was his profession again? He was
he was the heir of a canning company. A successful canning company business in New York City.
And his father pretty much owned his apartment. Not pretty much, he did.
He owned the whole
business.
Yeah.
He maintained. Yeah, and the apartment that he lived in, which was on 63rd Street, he kept it under a fictitious name of Weissman. So it wasn't even his real name. He kept it under a fictitious name for whatever reason. And really where this story gets to is that on the 8th of November 1963, a Harlem River drawbridge operator spotted a body identified as Reuben Markowitz, a bookmaker which was floating in the river. The last known contact with the deceased was a telephone call from him at 4:00 p.m. on the 10th of October 1963. The death was caused by 4 .22 caliber bullet rounds. And when they found the body, they also found that he was tied up. He was bound together. And it was later determined, after looking at the body, they found that they had his wallet on him. He had his identification. Nothing had been taken from him. He was left exactly the way he was. So obviously the police found this, and they tracked him back to people he might have had contact with. So they found out that he was Mark Fein's bookmaker. So they went up to him and they said, "Have you seen him?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, I saw him on this day, and I gave him the money because the whole reason he was involved with him was because he gave him his debts and everything, and then he bet on the 1963 World Series that the Yankees would win, and it turns out that the Dodgers won. So he lost that bet. So on top of the previous finances he owed him, he had to give him the the profits from this bet he lost. So him and his friend invited him to his apartment that wasn't even owned by him, and he shot him 4 times. And then I guess I some involvement with a woman. It was kind of they said she was a prostitute or something. I'm not so sure what the involvement with her was, but somehow I think she was in the apartment when it happened. But they apparently Fein had phoned and rented a station wagon, and I guess somewhere they got like a big trunk, a steamer trunk, and they stuck him in there, put him in the station wagon, drove him down to the Harlem River, and dropped him off in there.
Yeah.
And apparently there was even witnesses that saw them taking that trunk out of the car and throwing him in the river. So I mean, that wasn't suspicious at all.
Right.
Yeah. And he says that Fein. Yeah, this is the statement from Fein. He says that through his lawyers that he met the bookmaker at 4 p.m. on the 10th of October 1963 and paid him in a parked car $23,890 on behalf of himself and 2 friends. He said he never saw the bookmaker again. So, this was a huge case in 1963, 1964, and just all over the newspapers. But the real connection to Queen Mary is that in 1959, I believe, he was a passenger on board the Queen Mary with him and his wife. And if Steve will pull up the images here.
Oh, they've been up.
There's Oh, they've been up.
Yeah.
Okay. I was looking at the notes I have here.
In fact, this image is in the first class main lounge. You can see the golden onyx lighting urns in the background there with his wife, right?
Yep. So yeah.
And another one there with him dancing with the lighting urn in the background.
Yeah. And that one photo of them up close, I don't know where it came from, but it was printed on a matchbook and sold. And there was a picture of Mark Fein on it. But I believe it's from the Queen Mary because it looks just like the Queen Mary photo. He's wearing the same thing. So yeah, and that one picture of him in the cabin with the Hershey Kisses.
Oh, right. Let me go back to that one really quick. I'll go back to that one. There we go. Yeah. I would like to have that Hershey Kisses bag.
I know, huh?
Yeah, this is in their cabin, I guess. I assume their cabin in first class. Very nice looking cabin.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'll just add to what Shilo was saying was he basically loved to hobnob with the rich and the famous of that class. And so what better way than to do it on the Queen Mary? And so he actually, I think he sailed numerous times, but these are photographs taken during his one voyage in 1959.
Yeah.
And unfortunately his, when he was originally arrested and indicted for the murder, his wife divorced him. He had 2 children.
Change the children's names.
Yeah, changed their
Well,
names.
his wife
Yeah,
did.
changed their names. Changed her name. He
Yeah.
served, I believe, 30-something years. He was let out in the 1990s. As far as I know, he is still alive. So I will have to say that, if he is still alive, he did serve his time. And and to the wife and the children, we don't know their names, so we can't reveal them. But Mark did, in fact, do what he did, and I thought it was just an interesting story to talk about the Queen Mary, and we'll keep it at that. What, any last thoughts?
Spooky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very spooky.
Well, and I'm sure there's plenty other connections, similar to this that we don't even know about.
You're right. Absolutely.
That went unsolved, unnoticed, undocumented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, everybody. First I'll thank Milad because Milad's not here, but thank you to my friend Milad for coming in earlier. Chris, thank you very much wow, you've been with us for the whole 2 hours.
The whole thing, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us. And Shilo, thank you very much for being with us today. And Alex, thank you very much. Any last thoughts? Any words? Okay, we're all quiet. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you soon.